When you're feeling upset, do you ever get the urge to yell, scream, go for a sprint, or punch something? If the answer is yes, then you have noticed something very real about emotion, which is that emotion needs to move. Emotion, and particularly pain, often has a lot of energy behind it, and it is meant to move through us so that it can process and transform and leave. If we don't know how to move it, or we don't feel comfortable with moving it, we can end up suppressing its natural process and keeping it trapped inside of our bodies. When we do know how to help it move, our pain can often actually move through us much faster. We can feel free of it sooner. In this video, I'm going to share why so many of us struggle with this and how we can actually start moving emotion, even if it's really trapped in our bodies. My name is Ashley, and here on Live at Your Edge, I talk about how we relate to our inner experiences and how we can actually build the skills and the self-knowledge that we need to grow and evolve into versions of ourselves that feel freer, more alive, that feel more joyful and peaceful. Emotions come in so many different forms, but all emotions arise in our bodies in order to be fully felt by us and moved through our bodies. It's how we're designed. It is actually the natural state that we arrive in when we first arrive on this planet as babies. We are born with this capacity to immediately feel and experience and express the emotions that we have. So part of feeling our emotions and moving them through us is expressing them, okay? The expression of emotion that we see in babies and little kids is part of how the emotions physically move through us. But many of us were taught in childhood that it's not safe for us to express our emotions, right? Especially things that our parents might have been triggered by or felt unsafe with, right? If they felt like when you got angry or you were bursting into tears, that was just too much for them, they might have said, shush, don't cry, stop it, go to your room, you're not allowed to be angry, you need to calm down. You know, there are all these messages that we get from our caregivers that are from well-intentioned parents, but it's just the fact that we internalize these messages as that emotion is not safe. When I behave that way, when I express that emotion, my parent withdraws from me, they withdraw their love and nurturing from me, and that for a child is unsafe. Children rely on their caregivers for their care and safety and survival. So having a caregiver accept and receive us with nurturing and love is essential for our survival as kids. So when we internalize the message that what we're expressing right now is not okay, our nervous systems learn to self-suppress that emotion for us, right? To keep us safe. We don't even have to do it consciously. So every single time these emotions come up, our nervous systems are automatically suppressing them before we even get the chance to really feel them or begin to express them, right? This kind of self-suppression pattern can be a really tricky thing to work with, especially when we're just getting started, because our bodies do it before we can even stop it from happening. But the good news is that we can repattern this with practice. It just takes practice. In today's video, I'm going to cover two things. Number one, I'm going to talk about how to start repatterning this self-suppression. And number two, I'm going to talk about how we can actually start moving emotion once it's available to us. First, let's talk about how to begin repatterning self-suppression, which is very common and many of us have these patterns. Our nervous systems react to unsafe situations with fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses. So often what we're talking about here, this kind of self-suppression, is actually a type of freeze response. Now, freeze responses are a little bit different than some of the other nervous system responses to threats like fight or flight, which are created by the sympathetic nervous system. So a freeze response, alternatively, is actually created by the parasympathetic nervous system. A freeze response is a type of dorsovagal shutdown. So if you're familiar with the vagus nerve, it is one of the major nerves that is involved in creating parasympathetic tone, right? That part of our nervous system that's more on the rest and digest side of things. So This kind of response, a freeze response, is very different. It looks often on the outside like nothing is even going on. But on the inside, there's profound physiologic changes that are happening. Oftentimes, freeze responses look like everything slowing down. They look like emotional shutdown. It might look like fatigue or heaviness in the body. It might look like mental fogginess or feeling really spacey, feeling really out of it. It might look like feeling confused, feeling numb. These are all very sort of quiet internal states, but they are created by the nervous system shutting everything down in order to respond to a threat that is overwhelming and cannot be addressed via the sympathetic nervous system, right? And so in this case, in order to allow these emotions to move through, we need to create safety in the body. So in order to create safety, we need to do 3 things. We need to notice what's going on. We need to pause and allow the experience that we're having. And we need to actively send love to our inner self. If you've been on videos with me before, you have heard these 3 steps before. What I want to do now is walk us through these 3 steps for this particular situation, for this case where we are dealing with many, many years of emotional self-suppression, right? Which can be a very difficult pattern to unwind, but it can be done using these steps. So let's walk through it together. So step 1 is to notice. This is about noticing that an emotion is being suppressed. So for you, it might be anger, right? Every time some situation arises, it feels like you don't have access to that emotion. You can't express it. Instead of getting really angry, maybe you get really shut down. Maybe you get really confused. Maybe you get really foggy-headed or exhausted, right? All of these things are like symptoms of emotional suppression. These are classic for freeze responses. They are really powerful tells that there is an emotion coming up that's being suppressed by our parasympathetic nervous system. And so the first thing to do is to start a practice of noticing every time this happens, right? And so with any suppressed emotion, there will be tells that the emotion is there, even if the actual raw emotion is not something that will come up. Your tells are going to be unique to you. So the point of this part, this first step, is about noticing what happens when these situations come up. What does your body do? If you pay attention, you will figure these out. We're not doing anything else here. We're just noticing, okay? And I promise you, this is one of the most powerful steps. Just noticing that this is happening is essentially shining the light of our consciousness onto them. And that is an incredibly powerful beginning to starting to shift this pattern. So if that feels like enough, just start there. You don't need to do any more. If you do want to go further, if you feel ready for that, then step 2 is to pause. So whenever it's possible, as soon as you notice this happening, as soon as you notice your tell that this emotion is coming up, what you want to do is take a pause, like literally remove yourself from the situation as quickly as you reasonably can. And this isn't about like running out of the room exactly, but you want to just, when possible, politely excuse yourself and go find a private space where you can be alone and where you feel safe. Okay, so the best you can. These situations are going to happen in all different kinds of circumstances in our lives, and we don't have control over that. So this is not about perfection. You're kind of interrupting this pattern right in the middle of it while it's happening. And while it is happening is a really, really powerful time. It is probably the most powerful time to work with this pattern. During this pause that we're taking, the intention we're bringing is to be with our experience, to be with our feeling. It's not about changing it, not right now, right? We're not trying to change it. We're being with it. It's an energy of sitting next to it, right? If you imagine that the emotion is like a physical person in your body, you're coming up next to it and sitting next to this person, right? You're just being with them. You're not trying to fix them. You're being with them. It's a supportive energy. So that is a really powerful step as well. You can stop at any of these points if you're not ready to move on to the next step. If you are ready to move on, step 3 is sending love to this emotion, to the experience that we're having. This can look like talking with the emotion that's there. So if we take anger as an example, saying things to our anger like, it's okay for you to be here. It's safe here. You're allowed to be here. If you don't want to talk to the emotion directly, you can also just talk to yourself. It's okay for me to feel this way. It's safe for me to be angry. Some helpful postures for this can be hand on the heart. It can be havening, right? As we've discussed many times before, where you're stroking the brow, stroking the arms, stroking the hands. Even if you don't necessarily feel safe with the emotion that's coming up, this kind of physical touch will send messages of safety to your body. Then we're staying with this experience as long as the emotional cycle feels active, okay? As long as it still feels like it's unfolding, we're just staying with it. The most important thing is the intention we're bringing to notice, to pause, to send love and safety messages to the body. Just doing our best at those things, it will start to shift your nervous system. I can guarantee it. It will start to change what happens when that emotion comes up. You're basically gently opening up a clog in your system. And it takes time, but every time you do this, it makes progress towards more fluidity here. And you're essentially encouraging these emotions to come forward. You're saying, I know maybe it didn't feel safe before, but it is safe now. I'm creating safety now. And I am a sovereign adult who can do this for myself. And I just can't tell you how powerful that is. It will start to transform this pattern of self-suppression. I want to shift into part 2, which is about ways to actually move emotion through our bodies. Once we're at a place where we're able to allow the emotion to come up, right? So when anger's coming up, instead of shutting down, we feel angry, right? That's what we're aiming for here with working through self-suppression. Once the anger is here, the question is, well, now, how do I move it? Movement is about expression. So we need to talk about safe modes of expression, okay? We're aiming to move our emotions in a way that are not going to cause harm to other people in our lives. They're not going to hurt our homes, our belongings, right? We're not talking about destructive behavior. We're talking about healthy ways to move emotion through our bodies that will really help us to make sure those emotions don't come leaking out into our lives in other ways that can be more destructive, and help us to feel better, more alive, more fluid. Okay, so when it comes to moving emotions safely, the first piece is giving the self permission. It's important to consciously give ourselves permission to physically express our anger or our sadness or our rage or our disappointment, whatever the challenging emotion that's coming up. This piece about self-permission is really important because often when we're coming into this is not something we're used to doing. And so it may feel pretty uncomfortable at first. There are multiple layers of consciousness that cause us to suppress this stuff. And so it may not only just be fear of others seeing or hearing us, right? It might actually be our own shame or judgment of these types of expression that are helping to stop us from letting them come out. So the first piece is self-permission. The second piece is, as we've talked about, finding a private space. This is really important for this piece. This is all about expressing emotion in a way that is non-destructive. So finding a private space, our own container for doing this, is a critical piece. After we've got self-permission, we've got our private space, the third step is listening to our bodies. We're inviting ourselves to follow our instincts, to lean into what our body is asking to do, because usually when an emotion like this comes up, our bodies naturally want to do things. And I will say that it is easier if we can do this as soon as the emotion bubbles up, okay? So life can be complex. Sometimes we just don't have the space for it. And if that's true, it's okay, right? It's okay. But the sooner you can do it, the better. And then we are leaning into the feelings. We're letting our bodies do what they naturally want to do when this emotion comes up. So this might look like crying, sobbing, yelling, screaming. It might look like growling or grunting, right? It might look like coughing energy out, gagging, heaving. It might even look like dancing, right? Maybe sometimes you just have to dance it out. It might be jumping up and down. Sometimes if we feel disgust or where we feel like someone's trampling over us, right? Trampling our boundaries. Sometimes we need to push emotion or energy away from us. Sometimes we feel like there's energy that's inside of us and we need to pull threads out of ourselves, right? Energetic threads. Sometimes it might be wiping energy off ourselves, right? Like again, I associate a lot of these with disgust. These have been very powerful for me. So sometimes they're not just about emotion. Sometimes they're energetic in nature. Expression can be quiet. It does not have to be loud. Sometimes it might be things like rocking or humming, rolling around on the floor. Maybe curling up in the fetal position. That's a really big one. If that's what comes up naturally for your body, do it. Lean into whatever the expression is. And if you can, try not to have an expectation that it will look a certain way, that it will be loud and expressive. Sometimes it might be really quiet and subtle. My experience has been that this was a bit rockier for me in the beginning, and it was messier. And sometimes it was also louder and bigger because I was bursting out after all this self-suppression. So expect it to change over time. Once we get practiced with this, it will happen a little more naturally and it will be easier for us to follow our bodies, follow our intuition. And so if you've stuck with me this far, now I want to talk about why this is so important. When we practice this, we start unblocking the clogs, the energetic and emotional clogs that exist in our system that tend to keep our bodies stuffed up with unprocessed emotional content, old emotion and pain that hasn't ever had the chance to be fully felt, fully experienced, and expressed. And I really can't overstate what a big deal this is, because letting our emotions move and process and express is what allows them to leave our bodies. I think of it as leaving, but it's sometimes just a matter of transforming that energy into a different form. And so the emotion changes, right? It might shift into something more like peace and calm when it was anger, frustration, or sadness, right? So if it helps to think of it as transforming, I think that's also completely accurate. The way we are acculturated in our society, it's all about self-containment. It's all about composure, being strong and stoic, right? We are taught these things as values, as a part of our value system. And what that does is it makes our bodies more and more rigid, less free-flowing, and it takes our energetic system and starts to stuff a lot of emotional content into that space. We are talking about not only our ability to feel our feelings and feel free inside, right? To be able to feel fluid, and like when joy comes in, we can feel the joy. Because of course, when we're blocked up with a lot of unprocessed pain, our joy doesn't hit us as deeply. We can't experience any of our emotions as fully when we're suppressing a lot of them, right? When our bodies are blocked up. But it's not just about that. It's also the case that when we have enough content that is literally trapped in our bodies, it affects the way our cells function. The nervous system is creating these sympathetic or parasympathetic responses as a way of reacting when we feel we're not safe. The nervous system is pressing all of this down, right? Because in order for the emotion to stay down, we are suppressing it with, that's not safe, that's not safe. We're suppressing it with shame, with disgust, all kinds of different emotions that actively press it down. So it's not a passive thing. It's not like we stuff it down through self-suppression and containment, and then it just sits in there. We are actively compressing it down through these other emotions that are coming out of our nervous system response. So this is physiological. I'm not just talking about energetics. I'm talking about our human physiology. This freeze response, for example, is causing some level of shutdown in the cells. It is possible to create illness states in the body as a result of this. This is something that my sister Lauren talks about on her channel, Emotional Answers to Chronic Fatigue, which if you've been part of the Live at Your Edge community for a while, you know Lauren from earlier seasons when Live at Your Edge was an audio podcast. Lauren has her own YouTube channel that is all about chronic fatigue illnesses and how they are physically created through things like trauma and emotional suppression. There is a lot to this stuff. I think it's so important for us to understand how deep this is and what a big deal it is for our lives, because once this emotional content, this buried pain starts to come out, starts to leave our bodies, our lives, our emotional states, the way we are in our relationships, all of this completely starts to change. This kind of work will change your life. It will completely change your life, and your capacity to feel emotions will start to expand. Things will start to feel more fluid. And in difficult moments, this capacity to physically move energy is enormously helpful. When we're going through a difficult chapter of life, where we're going through grief, we're going through a loss, or a period where we feel furious about what's happening in the world, being able to move emotion is absolutely enormous for being able to move through those states and begin to heal and emerge from the darkness that we might be sitting in. I will also say that unprocessed emotion and unprocessed pain can hurt the people in our lives. So if you have people in your life that you've noticed sometimes will just kind of take stuff out on you, they'll be really grouchy, they'll be rude to you. If you notice that you feel like someone's got a lot of anger, right? Maybe they're playing super loud music in their car. They're acting out, right? They're frustrated. These behaviors happen because we have unprocessed emotion in our body that we don't know how to process. It's not because anyone's maliciously holding it in so they can go around and hurt people. It's because we don't know how. We haven't been taught. We haven't been supported in doing this. And this is why I'm so passionate about this topic, because it really does completely transform not only our experience of our lives, but also how others experience us. So this video is the third in my video series called the Darkness series, which is all about navigating life's most difficult seasons. And so if you are interested in this topic, or if you missed the previous two videos, I'm going to put a link to a couple of them here. You can also go to the playlist tab here on this channel to find the other videos in the series. Let me know how this goes for you. If you start to try this, or if you're in the midst of practicing this, let me know how it's going in the comments below. And in the meantime, I just want to thank you so much for being here with me. I wish you a beautiful week ahead, and I will see you next time.